The people become ecstatic and excitedly announce that Master Lloyd is back. Both his parents look at him and share in his happiness. His father gazes at him, thinking their son is the strangest, while Lloyd takes out treasure boxes from his carriage. Marbella remarks that he's a peculiar son, but she's happy, and they both go to meet him, embracing him warmly. Lloyd expresses that he'll be even more pleased when he calls his father's father instead of Count. His father grasps him by the shoulders and asks why he isn't wearing any clothes. Lloyd responds that it's because they have a lot of clothes at home. The scene shifts to Queen Alicia Magentano's palace, where Count Venture arrives and informs her that the negotiation mentioned earlier has been agreed upon via documents, and they have also received Samarkand's magic thumbprint. She expresses surprise at this development and asks if he is the one who led the negotiation. He becomes apprehensive and confirms it. She inquires whether this is what Lloyd Frontera instructed him to say and what he believes is necessary for their people to live comfortable lives. He responds that he believes a mighty throne and well-balanced diplomacy are necessary. She asserts that they just need to work with those who are competent in their bones and grind them until the bones turn into powder. He bows and acknowledges her words as reasonable, silently thinking that Sir Lloyd may consider himself dead. She reflects that despite the successful negotiation, Isfahan remains a long-time enemy of Magentano. She reflects on the necessity of establishing a mutually beneficial relationship filled with trust and ponders what actions they need to take to make it happen. Meanwhile, Sarajard stands outside the city, confident that Lloyd Frontera is there. She resolves to confront him and acquire what she needs. Spotting Arcos Frontera engaged in gardening, she approaches him from behind. Startled, he inquires about her identity. She introduces herself as Sarajard, explaining that she hails from the distant Isfahan in the east and is the daughter of Samarkand. Arcos Frontera quickly rises and questions her presence as the daughter of Samarkand and her purpose for being there. She reveals her intention to find Lloyd Frontera. Surprised, Arcos asks why she is seeking his son. She confesses that she can only find peace when he is around. Shocked, Arcos considers her statement the most absurd thing he has heard thus far. Lloyd Frontera lies down at the edge of a mountain and opens his eyes, questioning his surroundings as he notices the darkness. Suddenly, a fire monster appears before him. The fire monster greets him, addressing him not as Lloyd Frontera, but as Kim Suho. Lloyd Frontera gazes at the creature, contemplating whether this encounter is merely a dream, yet it feels remarkably real. He inquires about the identity of the fire monster. The monster introduces himself as Helcaros, the one who comprehends the essence of everything, the ruler of Hellfire and the king of Hell. Lloyd Frontera stands up and bows, acknowledging Helcaros' immense power. He muses on the possibility that this dream might be a result of the messengers teasing about the king of Hell. Helcaros chuckles, noting Lloyd's lack of fear in his presence, and questions whether he believes this to be a mere dream. Meanwhile, Lloyd Frontera asserts that regardless of whether this scenario is a dream or not, he doesn't perceive any intention of harm from Helcaros, especially considering his introduction. He expresses that there's no need for fear. Helcaros responds, saying his fondness for Lloyd Frontera and suggesting that he would fit well in Hell. Lloyd Frontera queries if that's intended as a compliment and shares his dream of living in a small town with abundant wealth. Helcaros remarks that for such a trivial dream, Lloyd Frontera's reaction was so appalling that even a demon knight would cower in fear, and the music played was more dreadful than purgatory's screams. Lloyd Frontera wonders if Helcaros descended just to insult him. Helcaros continues, claiming that Lloyd Frontera possesses the capability to make those souls in hell who have fallen into its embrace desperately beg for a second death. He considers why Helcaros is being so harsh. After all, he's just an ordinary person. Though to outsiders he might appear as some great demon king or the 12th supreme swordsman of a demon tribe. Helcaros addresses Kim Suho, asking if he will accompany him to hell and use his talent to his heart's content. As he attempts to capture Kim Suho, demonic strings emerge from the ground and ensnare him completely. The message window notifies him not to scare him so severely, which causes him to tremble and shout. Helcaros questions if he's being too intrusive, while the message window suggests that he could be worse and asks if he wants to test him. Helcaros concedes, agreeing to abide by the rules, and breaks his demonic strings. After a while, Lloyd Frontera wakes up in bed, sweating, and gets up, feeling his face burning hot. He wonders if that wasn't a dream, who he was talking to at the end, and asks himself what nosy and rule mean, and what on earth that was. Javier knocks at the door and asks if he can enter. Lloyd replies, "Yeah, sure, come in." Javier joins and asks why he's sweating so much. Lloyd gets out of bed, explaining that he guesses he got a little too hot while sleeping, and asks why Javier is there. Javier replies that they have a guest who came from far away. Lloyd responds, "Is that so?" They both go out. Javier asks if he's going to wait to ask who it is. Lloyd declines, saying he's not asking. He looks at Sarajard and asks if it's Sarajard. Javier confirms and asks if Lloyd knew she'd be coming. Lloyd affirms and says there's no way she wouldn't come, mentioning that she already knows how good his lullaby is. He remarks that quitting sleeping lullabies is very difficult, acknowledging that she wants him to record his lullaby into the magic crystal. She confirms that this is indeed the reason for her visit. Arcos Frontera reflects that she was referring to the lullaby, feeling somewhat relieved that it's only that, but also feeling a sense of sadness. Lloyd Frontera inquires about what's free, and she responds that she will pay him. He counters that he already has plenty of money, placing some documents on the table in front of her. He explains that if she signs the contract, he will give her what she wants. Javier notes that Lloyd had already prepared a contract in advance. Lloyd details the terms of the contract, serving in Frontera County for 5 years in exchange for receiving the lullaby after that period. She protests, deeming it ridiculous. He retorts that she doesn't have to agree if she doesn't want to, emphasizing that he is not the one in need and does not particularly care about it either. He mentions that he could become a sword master if he sleeps well and trains hard, but he quickly dismisses it as none of his business. Javier wonders how far Lloyd had planned ahead when he asked him to teach her before singing the lullaby, questioning if it was all just to obtain free labor. The message window notifies him that this is why a devil appeared in his dreams, asking to become friends. Lloyd reflects on his actions, realizing that he gives out money, helps people sleep, provides others with salaries, and assists with upgrades, essentially acting like an angel. However, the message window suggests that despite these acts, Lloyd is considered petty and underhanded by some. Lloyd thinks he can't hear her and repeats that he can't listen to her. Sarajard accuses Lloyd of pursuing this outcome from the beginning while Lloyd covers his ears, insisting he can't hear her well. In frustration, she crumples the documents, calling him trash, and storms out angrily. She thinks about what a vile, cheap, and underhanded person he is, contemplating that compared to letting him have his way, it might be better to become a sword master, even if it means signing that contract. She believes that only then will her father acknowledge her. Looking around, she wonders where she is and realizes that she needs to find the pathways. While doing so, she notices Julian Frontera sitting there sadly. Julian sits on a rock, and Sarajard sees him hidden behind a tree. She wonders who would be in such a place. She observes that he looks frail and weak, like an herbivore that could get devoured at any time. Meanwhile, some soldiers try to remove the big rock, and one soldier remarks that this won't work. The rock is not budging at all. Sir Knight expresses concern, stating that this is really bad, and asks what they should do. Julian steps forward and requests help. Sir Knight refuses, saying that he can't let him do that, as allowing such an important person as himself to get dirty doing menial work like this is unacceptable. Julian insists that there are times when the situation is more important than whether he gets dirty or not, and he can't allow everyone to have a hard time because of him. Sir Knight asserts that it is their duty to escort him, a talent of the Academy, back to his hometown, and they will make this work somehow, so please rest and wait for them. Julian removed his shirt, and they were shocked to see his body. Sarajard is also surprised to see him. He joins the soldiers, begins to push the rock, and instructs them to go with all their strength. She considers that if he is returning from the capital, he must be Lloyd's younger brother, but he appears markedly different from that individual. Julian attempts to push the rock, but fails to move it, stating, "This won't do. Let's dig the area around the boulder with a shovel bit by bit." A soldier inquires about the shovel, to which he responds affirmatively, having seen it before. He asserts that there is nothing a shovel cannot accomplish. Sarajard approaches him and remarks, "That's a good idea, but that will take the whole day." She asserts that she will clear it for him. Julian is surprised to see her. She advances, draws her sword, and contemplates that if she assists here, she should be able to gain more advantage in her negotiations with Lloyd. She strikes the rock with her sword, causing it to break into small parts. They are all shocked to witness this. She sheathes her sword. Julian expresses gratitude and inquires about her identity. She introduces herself as Sarajard from Isfahan in the east, currently residing at the Frontera estate. Meanwhile, an orc warrior, Mr. Kuga, observes Miss Emily approaching from the market, holding a vegetable basket. She walks past him and remarks that she hasn't seen him around lately. He passes by without uttering a word, reminiscing about Miss Emily. The scene shifts to a flashback where Miss Emily hangs the clothes after washing and Mr. Perme Kuga approaches her, inquiring if she loves Sergeant Greg. She affirms, stating that he is the most important person to her in the world. Mr. Kuga becomes angry, recalling instances of Miss Emily spending time with Sergeant Greg and his friends, mocking him. He concludes that this was a love that was not destined to succeed from the beginning, and there is no need to hurt her by uttering unnecessary words. She calls out to him, but he departs without saying anything. After a while, Miss Emily sits in a room with Sergeant Greg, who is sketching. He remarks that she seems on the verge of drowning the world with her sighs and inquires if something has happened. She asks if people would consider it strange if a female human confesses love to an orc warrior. He questions the absurdity of her statement and warns that if her family were to discover this, they would likely ostracize her and cause her harm. Mr. Kaga interjects, asking how he could treat Emily in such a manner. Meanwhile, Arcos Frontera sits at the dining table with his family and Sarajard. He cries and expresses that he cannot stop his tears, unable to believe just how well both of his sons have grown up. Lloyd Frontera remarks that he has become too drunk. Sarajard reflects on why he is so happy. His eldest son is a diplomat, and his youngest son is one of the best talents in the kingdom. She recalls a memory where Samir Khan suggests to her to demonstrate what she is capable of either by seducing a man or by becoming a swordmaster and showing him something of which he can be proud. Julian asserts that once he receives his appointment from the capital, he will work even harder and become someone he can be even more proud of. Arcos Frontera reassures him, asking what he is referring to. Julian explains that he is simply happy to have achieved his desires and feels free to return home if things become too challenging, expressing contentment even with just the two of them together. Sarajard also becomes emotional, rises from her seat, and states that she will excuse herself first. Lloyd Frontera inquires about their next negotiation. As she approaches the door, Sarajard dismisses the topic. Lloyd asks if he sounds overly blunt. Lloyd Frontera observes Julian and ponders over his expression. After a while, Lloyd Frontera glimpses Sarajard through the window as she packs her bags and prepares to depart. Julian approaches her and says something. Lloyd Frontera observes the interaction and contemplates the significance of the situation, considering it a vast and unexpected turn of events. Julian inquires about her late-night departure, questioning if she is leaving the estate. She denies it, stating that she was merely going for a short stroll. Julian understands, expressing his initial shock at seeing her with such a large bag, which led him to assume she was leaving. She clarifies that the bag contains all her meal boxes. Julian cautions her about the potential negative impact of consuming too many late-night snacks on her sleep. She assures him that she plans to eat most of them, indicating that they are primarily tools for picnics, and reflects on the lameness of her excuses. Julian expresses his relief, mentioning that something seemed amiss during dinner, causing him genuine worry. She reassures him of her well-being and considers staying for a few more days. Lloyd Frontera smiles devilishly. Just then, Javier approaches from behind, startling him. Lloyd reacts with fear and exclaims, "What the heck?" Javier explains that Lloyd scared him with his expression. Lloyd inquires about the matter. Javier stands there holding his pillow and remarks that it's time for Lloyd's lullaby, but since Lloyd didn't show up, Javier comes to find him. Javier questions why Lloyd is making such a scary face while observing a beautiful couple in love. Lloyd asks how Javier knew they had fallen in love. Javier responds that he could tell by watching them closely. Lloyd asks if it's necessary to observe closely to discern that, and remarks that he has seen numerous people, especially women, who look at him like that when they're in love. Javier sarcastically remarks that Lloyd has never experienced that before and adds that he's not surprised. He encourages Lloyd to hang in there. Lloyd Frontera considers himself to be incredibly obnoxious in times like this. Javier asserts that regardless of how jealous he may feel, he won't assist Lloyd in sabotaging Master Julian's love. Lloyd questions if he is genuinely such a horrible person and reflects on Javier's tendency to swiftly appear whenever there's an opportunity to criticize him. Javier declares that he will be the one to facilitate Julian's love and proclaims himself as the Cupid of love from that moment onward. He reflects on realizing this when he meets the Queen, acknowledging that it's due to the skills and future information provided by the messenger that he has gained numerous enemies. He recalls the memory of Queen Alicia Termina Magentano, stating that he will have to keep working until even the power of his ground bones goes up in flames, as that's what is necessary for the people's lives to be at peace. He ponders that he will genuinely be exploited until he is dead at this rate. He needs to find a way out, and the two of them will be the key to achieving it. The scene shifts to Bai Beong swimming and enjoying the water. On the other side, Sergeant Greg approaches Kuga and asks if he is Kuga. Kuga advises him not to pick a fight, expressing his desire to avoid quarrels. Sergeant Greg reaches into his shirt, retrieves a paper plane, tosses it at Kuga, and questions who says he will allow that to happen. The paper plane hits Kuga on the head. Sergeant Greg instructs Kuga to come to the location specified in the letter that evening, stating his dislike for vague conclusions. Mr. Kuga opens the letter and asserts that an orc warrior never backs down from a fight initiated by someone else. However, he acknowledges that he just did. Mr. Kuga admits to changing his mind. Meanwhile, Julian sits on a chair, contemplating as he continues to think about her hair more beautiful than silk, her eyes resembling pearls, and the hidden sadness in her heart masked by her strong demeanor. He ponders if this is what people refer to as love. Lloyd Frontera approaches him and whispers, calling it love. Julian questions what Lloyd has been doing since just now, remarking that it seems like Lloyd is reading his mind or something. Lloyd Frontera responds that he simply had a feeling that this might be the case for Julian and asks if he was mistaken. He displays peculiar expressions. Lloyd Frontera affectionately refers to Julian as his precious, sweet brother. Julian recoils, finding it distasteful, and asks what is going on. Lloyd Frontera explains that he plans to record his lullaby and give it to Lady Sarajar the following day, implying that she will likely return to her country upon receiving it. He exits the room, yelling that she will probably leave. On the other side, Sergeant Greg stands with some soldiers and declares that when Kuga appears, he wants all of him too. Just then, Kuga arrives with some orc warriors and addresses the human soldiers, questioning if this was not supposed to be a one-on-one confrontation and accusing them of cowardice. Sergeant Greg laughs and expresses his satisfaction at catching Kuga, suggesting that they settled the relationship between humans and orcs now. Meanwhile, Lloyd Frontera sees Lady Sarajar and waves toward her. She punches him in the face. He remarks that he has not said anything yet though. She apologizes, stating that it was a reflex. He lies on the floor with a broken face and expresses that Julian is brilliant, so he will probably receive his appointment soon. This might happen tomorrow, and then he will leave this place. On the other side, Julian sits and thinks that she's leaving. Sarajar also sits in her room and feels that she can't ever see him again. He moves toward her room and feels that he doesn't want that now. She also moves toward his room and thinks that she must tell him. She has to. Lloyd Frontera sits in his room and assumes that these things are happening. Meanwhile, Kuga stands in the garden and feels some rustling behind him. Julian stands outside her room and thinks that if he does not tell her his feelings, he will regret it. At the same time, Sarajar also stands outside his room and feels that if she does not tell him her feelings, she will regret it for the rest of her life. On the other side, Miss Emily approaches Kuga and asks what he is doing here, mentioning that she came because her brother asked her to. Sergeant Greg suggests they go, and his soldiers and orc warriors move to attack each other. The scene shifts to the Black Mage Targa's ancient castle, where Alicia Termina Magentano arrives with her army, raises her hand, and commands a full assault. The soldiers launch arrows toward the castle, and she employs magic to set it ablaze. The Black Mages counterattack with their own magic. A mage inquires about how they learned of this place. Another mage orders them to cease their attack and protect Sir Targa. They engage in battle with the soldiers. Suddenly, a giant monster appears. The soldiers are shocked and inquire about the nature of the beast. The mage leader orders them to invoke the punishment of the fire god. Flames engulf the surroundings, and the monster advances to attack the soldiers. Alicia Termina Magentano orders an immediate retreat, instructing everyone to evacuate the castle. The monster screams. She inquires about the well-being of the first attack squad. A person reports that they have 5 injured, and the mage squad has 1 wounded member. Another person directs all commanders to assemble and await Her Majesty's orders. Someone interjects, noting that the queen is nowhere to be seen. Alicia approaches the monster with her sword and prepares to attack it with magical power. She strikes her sword against the floor, causing it to break, and the creature begins to fall. She utilizes poison magic and believes it is crafted through sorcery, yet she remains undeterred as her body has been trained to withstand poison over time. She proceeds to enter the castle and opens the door. Inside, she encounters a man dressed in red who becomes angry with her. She questions if he is Targa. He confirms with a blink of his eyes. She demands to know how he dares to plot a rebellion against their kingdom and declares her intention to execute him immediately. As she moves forward to attack him, she severs his neck from his body. He collapses and she believes it is over. However, she suddenly experiences pain in her eye, covers it with her hand, and wonders what just happened. Meanwhile, Julian and Serajard are getting married, and Arcos Frontera becomes emotional upon witnessing this. Everyone appears happy for them. Lloyd Frontera makes strange faces. Javier notices him and asks if he can't simply go home, suggesting that he is spoiling a joyous occasion. Lloyd Frontera asks what he has done wrong, insisting that he is merely expressing his happiness. Javier responds that he does not understand, reminding him that this marriage was supposed to prevent the queen from using him like a slave. Lloyd Frontera counters, suggesting that he should think carefully. He is now someone who is essential in both countries. He asserts that while he is a citizen of Magentano, he is also family with Samar Khan. Javier inquires if Samar Khan does not hate him. Lloyd Frontera responds that he is not an idiot and suggests that Samar Khan probably realized that Lloyd was only pretending with the sandworm, indicating that Samar Khan still wants Lloyd Frontera to join him. Lloyd Frontera asserts that if the queen attempts to use him like a slave, he will discreetly align himself with Samar Khan. Javier acknowledges and understands his intentions and then urges him to go home. He questions if that is all Javier has to say after hearing his grand plans. He reflects that although he still cannot openly defy the Queen Alicia Termina Magentano, he will gain the power to leverage his relationship with Samar Khan as a valuable bargaining chip. After a while, Samar Khan receives Julian and Serajard's marriage photo. On the other side, Lloyd Frontera expresses his happiness for his beloved brother and Serajard. He envisions a place devoid of succession struggles and the constant pressure imposed by his father throughout his life. Miss Emily approaches and encourages them to throw the bouquet with all their strength. Serajard throws the bouquet forcefully and it lands in Lord Solidas' hand. Julian and Serajard depart, holding each other's hand. Lloyd Frontera watches them and reflects on how Serajard died in the novel, while protecting Samar Khan from the rebels. He acknowledges that this feeling is immensely satisfying, even though it doesn't bring him any financial gain. Just then, a message box appears in front of him, notifying him that he has saved yet another person from another unfortunate death. He thinks he knows that too and wonders why it is stating the obvious. The message box notifies him that the number of fates he has saved is increasing, starting from 1 and quickly reaching 23,513,442. He wonders why the number is so significant and thought it would only be a few hundred people. The message box states that as a result of saving more than 20,000 people, he will be given additional DP dungeon points. If he consumes 50,000 DP, he will be able to gain a skill that exceeds the ending spoiler and gain the right to use World's Strongest. The notification states that World's Strongest allows him to use the world's top-tier power for 30 seconds. He thinks that it's way too short and wonders what he can do in 30 seconds. Moreover, he believes it's not the strongest in the world, just top tier. He contemplates that although he doubts it would happen, if he does need to fight with the strongest being in the world, he will surely lose. The message box notifies him that in order to use this skill, he must give up on all support provided by the messenger. This means all the skills, summons, and ending spoilers will no longer be available for usage. He thinks to himself that he should forget it. He won't ever need this. The message box asks what's wrong, questioning if he doesn't want to part with it. He thinks not at all, as without his skills, everything will go downhill. Just then, Mr. Karen Count Ventura comes up behind him and calls out to him. He commends him on the officiating. Count Ventura expresses gratitude, stating that thanks to him, Asfehan and Magentano had recently entered into a peace contract. Now they are no longer just allies but brother countries. He laughs and remarks that he didn't do much. He was merely the one who facilitated the negotiation, and his younger brother is the one who's getting married. Count Ventura bows down and asks for forgiveness for belittling him in his thoughts, acknowledging him as a true hero. He responds by saying that there's no need to apologize and that he can knock him as much as he wants. He admits to being super materialistic, really petty, and snobbish. He thinks not to make himself sound great. He doesn't want to be in the spotlight, nor does he care about being the hero. He just wants to be average. Count Ventura says it's useless for him to hide, as the queen has guessed what happened. He agrees but mentions it's just a guess. Count Ventura praises his humility. He requests him to listen to what he is saying. Count Ventura continues, stating that as he might have already expected, the reason the queen sent him there to officiate is also to summon him to the capital. He thinks to himself, there it is, time to act sick. He coughs and mentions that he has been coughing lately, feeling a bit sick and needing to recuperate in Isfahan. Count Ventura informs him that the queen wants to meet him. He reflects on how she only looks for him when she needs him but feigns ignorance when he wants to meet her. He recalls her holding his face and saying that he is not that selfish and petty. After a while, Lloyd Frontera sadly sits in a cart with Javier, and after some time, they reach the palace. He goes and kneels down in front of Queen Alicia Termina Magentano. She remarks that she is incredibly relieved that he arrived promptly without any delays. She jests that had he ignored her summons, she might have been inclined to charge into his county due to a broken heart. She speculates that he would likely flee to Isfahan if that were the case, a thought that saddens her deeply. He interprets her words as a veiled warning not to overstep boundaries and to maintain a harmonious relationship without any issues. He expresses his utmost respect, assuring her that he would never dare to ignore her summons. He hopes that she will provide him with her instructions. He contemplates that she may be lenient with him at the moment, and if he navigates the situation carefully and negotiates skillfully, he may avoid being exploited for labor. The queen rises from her seat and announces that she has something to show him, instructing him to follow her. After a while, Lloyd Frontera is shocked to see a dragon and wonders what these dragon bones are for. Queen Alicia Termina Magentano explains that they discovered the bones while subjugating the black mages, indicating that the mages were attempting to use them for a ritual. Lloyd Frontera recalls reading in a novel that various magic tools can be crafted from dragon bones, causing him to feel intrigued. The queen proposes that by utilizing these bones, they can showcase the strength of the Magentano kingdom to the world. She suggests creating a vast garden behind the castle and placing a statue of Lloyd Frontera alongside the dragon bones at its center, symbolizing the kingdom's victory over a dragon. Lloyd Frontera acknowledges the opportunity to leverage Kim Suho's social skills in this endeavor. He bows down and expresses gratitude for entrusting him with such a monumental task, conveying that he feels greatly honored. She inquires about his statement, to which he clarifies that he is thanking her. She asserts that he is not, but he insists that as a token of his gratitude, he will waive the construction charges this time. Surprised, she questions if he has any additional requests. He proposes that, as a reward for undertaking the task, he be granted immunity from labor work for 10 years. She seeks clarification, prompting him to realize he is walking a fine line. He backtracks slightly, suggesting that if she deems his initial request excessive, perhaps she could offer him a single dragon tailbone as a compromise. She hits him on the head and, after whacking him once, expresses generosity by taking the tailbone and suggesting a replacement. He kneels down and offers to endure 1,000 whacks or even be stepped on. She declines, instructing him to leave immediately, deeming him filthy. He thinks to himself that while he's been promised an incredible reward and spared from exploitation, he still harbors a desire to earn money without working for it. He wishes to obtain money effortlessly through play or other means, regardless of the effort required. After a while, Viscount Nord enters Lloyd Frontera's room and asks if he is Lloyd. Lloyd confirms his identity. Viscount Nord introduces himself as an expert garden designer and expresses a desire to discuss work. He thinks to himself that he is just a young kid compared to him, an artisan who was born a commoner and spent over 30 years building up his skills and reputation. He believes that the quality of his work differs significantly from that of someone like Viscount Nord, who had it easy being born into nobility. Despite this, he acknowledges that they will be working together this time around. Lloyd Frontera asks what he means and states that he is just a kid who got lucky, lacking substantial knowledge or experience. He rests his head on the table and questions how he could dare to consider working alongside a respected Viscount like himself. He expresses a desire to learn from Viscount Nord and considers it an honor to realize his own shortcomings. Viscount Nord acknowledges Lloyd's sentiment, thinking that the kid knows his stuff. The scene shifts to the next day. Viscount Nord presents a blueprint and asks Lloyd Frontera how he finds it. Lloyd expresses amazement, asking if it's possible to execute all the details within a day. Viscount Nord confidently affirms it is feasible and mentions he has already completed it within a day. Lloyd points to a part of the blueprint, praising Viscount Nord as a genius, and inquires about the possibility of another section. Viscount Nord assures him it's achievable, stating he finished all aspects. Lloyd sarcastically agrees, commenting that Viscount Nord would only mess things up if he intervened. Viscount Nord suggests he'll commence the surveying and requests Lloyd to leave so as not to hinder his progress. Lloyd acknowledges the request, affirming he'll keep that in mind. He walks away, muttering about Viscount Nord's genius. Lloyd Frontera strolls over to a swing, reclines on it, and thinks to himself that it's a jackpot. One should always be vigilant for free opportunities. He reflects that it's due to hardworking and competent individuals like the Viscount that he can enjoy himself while still making money. Meanwhile, the dragon bones in the palace begin to glow, and the soul of Targa, within the dragon bone in a luminous form, declares that he hasn't given up on Alicia Magentano and vows to seek revenge by killing her. After a while, Viscount Nord stands alongside Lloyd Frontera and describes a serene vision, a tranquil state of nature. He explains that in this place there exists an unseen order and beauty. Viscount Nord questions why humans yearn for the power of gods, asserting that it's because only gods possess the ability to create and craft something out of nothingness. He asks if Lloyd Frontera doesn't believe that's the closest one can be to a god and expresses his own awe as he builds his beautiful garden, feeling akin to a deity. Lloyd Frontera thinks to himself that he truly admires this old man's passion for his work. He's genuinely a fantastic person. He thinks he has to make sure he takes even more from him. Viscount Nord says he is going to a meeting with the other people involved in this construction since Lloyd Frontera is unaware of so much, and he can just sit out on this meeting. Lloyd Frontera bows down and says he is so embarrassed of himself that he will work on himself endlessly, so that he can become someone who's worthy of a seat in that meeting. He sees him leaving from there and says there's no way he will just be sitting on his hands here. He gathers Pipodong, Bengal, Hamang, Jigoming, and Bai Beong and suggests they have a party. He jokes that a wild Bai Beong has appeared and tells Pipodong to use a thunderbolt. Pipodong playfully attacks Bai Beong, causing him to wince in pain. Meanwhile, Javier rushes over. He throws nuts at Bai Beong and claims him as his own. Pipodong accidentally hits Lloyd Frontera, who exclaims that Pipodong has rebelled against him. Despite this, he finds the situation incredibly amusing, reveling in the idea of earning money without working. Just then, Javier announces that the Queen has arrived, leaving Lloyd Frontera shocked. After a while, he sets up a table, places many papers on it, and starts pretending to work. Queen Alicia Termina Magentano arrives and sees him. He notices her, kneels down, and pays his respects to the rightful owner of the land. She remarks that even he finds his actions pretty fake if he doesn't. She questions whether he's been merely playing instead of working. Then she asks if he believes Viscount Nord is foolish and implies that climbing from being a commoner to a Viscount isn't achievable solely by performing well. He considers whether to inform him. The scene shifts to a flashback where Viscount Nord kneels down in front of Queen Alicia Termina Magentano and expresses that he has something to report to her. She instructs him to speak. He explains the dragon statue made of bones that was built before her statue in the middle of the garden and the boat that was constructed to appreciate its splendor. He mentions that he has given a lot of thought to how they should be created. However, due to the difference in water level between the start and end points, the speed is too fast, and he does not have any solutions for this at the moment. She inquires if he wants to abolish that idea. He responds negatively, stating that the young man known as Lloyd Frontera has proposed a solution. He suggests they create a step before the starting point and install a valve door at the end of that step. He explains that once the boat is in, they will close the rear valve door and lower the water level by removing water. Once the water level is the same, they will open the front valve door and allow the boat to depart. He adds that other than this problem, they were also able to resolve a great deal of other issues with his help. Every time a problem is resolved, he would simply refer to himself as an ignorant fool who was just speaking his thoughts out loud. He recalls Lloyd Frontera saying that as to whether it's actually feasible, only someone as wise and experienced as he will be able to decide on that. Viscount Nord acknowledges that he resolved the problems with his abundance of knowledge and talents, but passed the credit over to him. He mentions that he has given up on his desire to just play around while gaining profits and is putting in the effort to aid in the construction. He adds that he would say that he is indeed the role model of a competent person. The story returns to the present. Lloyd Frontera thinks about what kind of excuse he should give. She's not going to label him a traitor to the kingdom if she is. She raises his head and tells him to lower that ass of his before she kicks it. He gets up. She expresses her satisfaction with what he has done and tells him to keep up the good work before leaving. He is surprised to hear these comments. He tells Javier that he guesses she did not catch onto his fooling around. He says it seems he is clueless in situations like this. Javier asks what he means. Lloyd says it's nothing. Please enjoy playing around. Lloyd Frontera explains that as autumn passes by and winter covers everything with snow, the massive garden's construction continues without end, and he too does not rest at all. He says since he does not know when he'll be able to play like this again, spring comes and the garden is completed with its magnificent highlight. The scene shifts to a party where many people gather. A person remarks that she's the Queen of Magentano. She definitely has an extraordinary air around her that sets her apart from everyone else. The Magentano Kingdom is the strongest country in the world, and the country would like to build friendly relations. Lloyd Frontera eats meat. Noticing him, he thinks he knew it. The reason why she wanted to make such a grand garden was to show off that the Magentano Kingdom is filled with materials and money to the public, and he guesses the neighboring countries will be bowing their heads to her. He notices Javier and asks why he is not eating anything. Javier says there's something about this that he does not like. He asks if it is too lavish. Javier says no, not that. It's more like he is thinking that Master Lloyd is really unlucky. He gets angry, grabs his shirt, and asks why he is suddenly picking a fight out of nowhere, what it is, and what he does not like. Javier says that's not what he means and asks if he remembers Cremo and the suspension bridge. He asserts that every time there has been a banquet after he has done something, a massive incident has always occurred, and if something does happen again, then it is confirmed that he is really unlucky. Lloyd Frontera asks if he is talking as if that is going to happen. Just then, the Dargon bone breaks and grabs everyone's attention. Viscount Nord is shocked to see it. Lloyd Frontera thinks there is no way. He has tried everything using his simulation skill, but it has never collapsed. Javier pushes him back and says to prepare to run away. He thinks Javier is bringing up the topic of running away first. He is not supposed to make that face full of fear. He wonders what the hell is happening with the bones. A black magic spell comes out from the Dargon bones and starts spreading all around. In the Dargon bones, Targa's soul awakens and controls it. He sees Queen Alicia Termina Magentano's statue and thinks that right before she cut off his head, he transferred his soul into these bones, and now he has completely descended. He screams and attacks the statue, destroying it. Everyone is shocked to see this. He assembles his black magic power, and everyone is ready to fight with swords. Queen Alicia Termina Magentano screams and says to get away unless he wants to die helplessly. She thinks this monster contains enough mana to cover the skies, and only sword masters and above can stop it. She moves forward to attack him with her sword, but he hits her with a claw, throws her away, and destroys things there. He observes his moves and wonders if it is because he is still not used to this body and can't move very quickly yet. He reflects that it does not matter, considering these humans are akin to ants to him at this point. She rises and concludes that brute strength won't defeat such a monster, prompting her to summon Lloyd Frontera. She determines to find an alternative solution. Lloyd Frontera swiftly departs from the scene, surprising her with his action. He considers the possibility that Javier might be Javier Asrehan and contacts Asrehan. Javier joins him, and they all run to save their lives. While running, Javier remarks that he won't receive payment for his work if they keep fleeing. Lloyd Frontera calls him a money-obsessed lunatic and questions if money is the only thing he can think about. He insists their priority is staying alive. All Javier talks about is money, which irritates him. Javier stops abruptly. Lloyd Frontera inquires why he halted. Javier explains that if they neglect such matters, their country will eventually suffer, emphasizing the need to protect their resources. Lloyd Frontera continues running, stating that the creature possesses more than 100 times his mana, advising Javier to give up and keep running. However, Javier asserts that his resolve won't falter, urging Lloyd Frontera to continue fleeing while he confronts the creature, even if it means sacrificing himself. Targa employs his magic to attack, hurling Queen Alicia Termina Magentano aside. He launches another magic ball at her, but she evades it. Just then, Javier arrives and attacks him from the side with sword master powers. He turns to face Javier and throws a black magic ball at him. He considers Javier an annoying fly. Although the attacks are not precise, Javier would die if hit once. Javier hits the magic ball with his sword and sends it back towards him. It strikes Targa's head, and he realizes he is getting used to this body, now having complete control over it. He prepares to launch another attack. Javier attempts to save Queen Alicia Termina Magentano by shielding her, but Targa throws fire toward them. Meanwhile, Lloyd Frontera holds Bai Beong, offers him an almond, and sits on Jigoming. He informs Bai Beong that he has chosen him and thrown him. Bai Beong consumes the almond, increases in size, employs a megaton press, attacks Targa, and defeats her. Lloyd Frontera seizes Queen Alicia Termina Magentano's hand to rescue her. Targa observes Bai Beong and ponders its identity. They all mount Jigoming to flee and confront Targa. Lloyd Frontera directs Jigoming, proclaiming now is the time for a fecal bombardment. Jigoming hesitates, citing the presence of onlookers. Pipadong questions the potential implications for Bengal if such a statement were made and urges Jigoming to proceed. Jigoming initiates the fecal bombardment, which descends upon Targa. She inquires of Lloyd Frontera if he has devised a plan. He implores for forgiveness, asserting that this endeavor is all or nothing. He announces his intention to offer the object to someone even mightier than it and summons the Dragon King. He contemplates the Dragon King described in the novel, who is depicted as a knight of iron blood and a benevolent dragon that maintains order among dragons and harbors affection for humans. Targa advances to confront them. He reflects that a Dragon King akin to himself would not remain passive while the zombie lizard wreaks havoc. He recalls that Gaipel is the area where he resides. He inquires of Queen Alicia Termina about the distance to Gaipel. She queries about Gaipel and remarks that reaching that location will require a day's travel even at their current pace and wonders why he asks. Suddenly, Jigoming positions itself between Targa's jaws but swiftly maneuvers to shield everyone. Lloyd Frontera observes the speed of this action, considering it remarkable for such a massive creature, and acknowledges the necessity of evading such a pursuit for an entire day. Javier inquires about the potential for resolution upon reaching Gaipel. He asserts with certainty that they must indeed get there. Javier employs the aura blast to assault Targa's bones, but realizes it is futile. He redirects his attack towards Targa's wings, successfully incapacitating them. Targa descends. Lloyd Frontera commends Javier for his effective action, encouraging him to persist. Targa ponders how he dares to employ such petty tricks. Lloyd Frontera requests Alicia to lend him the sword. She questions who Alicia is. He responds that they don't have time. She should just hand it over. She attempts to say something, but he insists on the sword. Reluctantly, she agrees and passes her sword to him. He explains that they will strike at a trajectory where Targa cannot dodge simultaneously. He and Javier attack him, channeling the power of their swords. She is shocked to witness this. Their combined power strikes Targa's dragon bones, but fails to affect him. Lloyd Frontera demands to know what is happening and if Targa is growing stronger. Suddenly, something happens to Lloyd Frontera, causing him to fall unconscious. She grabs him and instructs Javier to assist in lifting his upper body. Together, they support him, and he regains consciousness, questioning their actions. Lloyd Frontera, frightened by the sight of the dragon bones, is struck on the back and urged to follow orders by shouting blast. He screams loudly, and the blast affects the dragon's bones. She acknowledges his success, remarking on the usefulness of his face. Targa reflects on Lloyd Frontera's past achievements, including curing Magentano's poisoning, repelling an army of mastodons, and defeating the Hell Knight. Lloyd Frontera reflects on how frightened he was, noting that his heart almost dropped even though he does not have one, and wonders how anyone on Earth could possess such a hideous face. Nonetheless, he considers this situation advantageous and plans to exact revenge on both of his enemies simultaneously. She repeatedly slaps Lloyd Frontera on the back to prompt him to blast. He responds that it didn't work. She expresses disbelief, suggesting covering its eyes with mana, and questions if it hates the sight of his face so much. Lloyd Frontera inquires why she keeps using his face. Javier requests covering her ears with mana and instructing Lloyd to use the screams of hell. Lloyd Frontera remarks that it's just his singing. Javier dismisses the comment, urging him to proceed. Lloyd Frontera screams. She complains that it's persisting despite covering her eyes and ears while chasing after them. Targa inquires how it's catching up. She concludes that the tactic is no longer effective. Lloyd Frontera acknowledges his mistake, realizing that his plan to use the Dragon King is a complete failure, and admits that they have no choice but to defeat it. He wonders if the creature even has a weakness, and if such a monstrous entity could have one. She suggests taking the tailbone and replacing it with something else. He realizes that it does have a weakness. Jigoming swiftly flies away from the area, leaving the dragon bones behind. Targa observes that he is growing stronger over time, having relinquished his humanity and transcended into a being that surpasses nature. Targa is on the verge of catching them. Lloyd Frontera commands Jigoming to use the spiderweb flares, and Jigoming deploys the spider web. He complains that all they do is cause him trouble. Suddenly, they disappear, and Targa begins to search for them, wondering where they went. Meanwhile, they all converge upon Targa, and Queen and Javier leap down to attack him with swords. Lloyd Frontera identifies the fourth tailbone from the pelvis. Javier attacks it with sword master powers, proclaiming the discovery of the fake tailbone made from granite. He reflects that even though the tailbone might be affected, it is likely strengthened by the dragon's power, but they have two sword masters on their side. She reminds Lloyd Frontera that he had previously informed her that the bone was made from the bones of an emperor whale. He apologizes, stating that rational skimping of materials and efforts is always correct. She attacks his tailbone and breaks it. Lloyd Frontera joyfully remarks that it's just like this moment. The scene shifts to Lloyd Frontera lying down on the bed to relax, with Javier standing nearby. He remarks that they were out for a really long time. Javier inquires when he is going to put on some clothes and comments that with his face and current attire, the unpleasantness seems to have increased tenfold. He retorts to stop insulting his face, mentioning that it's more infuriating when he does it. Javier smiles and apologizes, promising to be more careful. He questions why he looks so happy, reminding him that he told him to stop it. Javier sets his clothes aside and asks when he is going to address the Countess and Count as mother and father. He contemplates what an unexpected question. Javier explains that even though he desires to address them as his parents, he doesn't feel qualified to do so. He is capable of doing that, yet he addresses them by their titles. He wonders what he is supposed to do since they are not his real parents. Calling them that would be deceiving them. Javier apologizes, admitting he got emotional when mentioning the words mother and father and said something unnecessary. He bids Lloyd Frontera to have a good rest. Lloyd Frontera reflects on losing his own mother and father and asks if Javier remembers what his parents were like. Javier questions if he's asking because he's genuinely curious about them. He confirms, expressing genuine curiosity about Javier's parents. The scene shifts as they all fight with Targa's soul inside the dragon bones. Targa hits the ground and curses, feeling his balance falter. Piporong jumps on his face, and Lloyd and Queen also arrive. Lloyd Frontera employs the maximum output blast, launching an attack with fire flames. Targa wonders where the idiot is aiming. Meanwhile, Javier is utilizing his powers in conjunction with Lloyd's. Lloyd uses the supercharged powers and attacks Targa. The system window notifies that his mana heart skill has leveled up, indicating that his ability to purify the poisonous mana of the undead has grown exponentially. Queen Alicia Termina Magentano also moves to attack him with her sword, striking him and breaking his bones. He screams in pain. Lloyd Frontera believes it's working, and they will emerge victorious. The system window notifies that a new skill option has appeared. Half human, half dragon, indicating that he has absorbed a significant amount of dragon mana and the qualities of a dragon have been added to his mana heart. It further notifies that the dragons he encounters will be interested in him. Javier, Lloyd Frontera, and Queen Alicia Termina Magentano collectively attack him. The scene shifts back to the present, and Lloyd Frontera asks if it is strange for him to ask questions like that. Javier responds affirmatively, stating that it is unusual because he does not seem to be the type to be interested in other people. Lloyd Frontera acknowledges this, admitting that he doesn't really know why he was curious either, and it's not like he is his friend. The scene shifts back to the fight where they cut the dragon's tailbone. Lloyd Frontera and Javier attack him, but he hits Javier, causing Lloyd Frontera to sit down and cover his head. He looks back and sees Javier spitting out blood. Targa moves to run and attacks, throwing Javier and Pipadong away, causing his tailbones to come back and stick to his body. He also attempts to attack Lloyd Frontera by placing a claw on him, prompting Lloyd Frontera to call for Javier's help. Queen Alicia Termina Magentano arrives, saving him, and encourages him to pull himself together and find a solution as he always has. She reminds him that the kingdom will fall without him and urges him to find a way to save Javier as he saved her. He reflects that he doesn't know how, as Javier's mana disappeared completely in an instant, and he lacks the ability to heal someone from that. Meanwhile, Javier finds himself submerged in water with his broken sword and realizes he needs to gather his mana. He will expand it and collide it into each other. His aura signals that this is the end for him. However, he believes he needs to save himself. On the other side, she holds Lloyd Frontera on his back and runs from there to rescue him, with Targa following them. He regrets not using his CP to see the ending spoiler and not gathering tons of RP to grow stronger. Nonetheless, he knows he needs to save Javier. He has to do it, and he will do it. He requests her to please let him jump off her back. She asks what. He jumps from her back, determined to save his friend. He plunges into the water, extends his hand toward Javier, and resolves to save his friend. He holds out his hand and instructs Javier to absorb his mana. Javier begins absorbing his mana. Outside the water, Targa attacks Alicia with a magic ball, but Pipadong hits him in the face, distracting him. Meanwhile, underwater, Javier tries to pull himself and notices something off with Master Lloyd's mana. He wonders if this is even mana. It looks like mana, but it's otherworldly and completely different. It's as if it's outside the rules of this world. Jigoming attempts a shit bombardment on Targa, but it doesn't affect him, and he counterattacks. Javier continues absorbing Lloyd's mana and realizes he can't control it. Bengal moves to attack him and distract him, while Queen Alicia Termina Magentano moves to attack him with a sword. She identifies his weak spot and thinks it's the worst timing, but he attacks her and throws her away. On the other side, Javier apologizes, realizing that he has taken on the appearance of Master Lloyd, and his mana is something he cannot understand. He regrets not being able to remain by his side. Lloyd Frontera's face fills with water, and upon seeing it, Javier screams. The system window notifies him that Javier, after seeing that hellish face of his, has come to understand what's outside of causality. Queen Alicia is about to fall, but Jigoming arrives and saves her from falling. The system window notifies that Javier is controlling the mana of the upper world that he absorbed from him, and Javier's body has disregarded some parts of causality. Pipadong, Bengal, Haming, and Jigoming are scared and angry at Targa. Targa attacks them with a magic ball. On the other side, the system window notifies Lloyd that every cell in Javier's body is now functioning as a mana heart. Javier explodes with mana powers, and wings pop out from his body as he emerges from the water while holding Lloyd Frontera. Everyone is shocked to see his angel wings. Lloyd spits out the water. Targa realizes he did not see him coming, but suddenly, he appears in front of him. Javier puts him down, takes his sword, and attacks the dragon bones, turning them into dust. Lloyd Frontera sees this and realizes that Javier did it. He has become the strongest human being mentioned in the Knight of Iron Blood, the Grand Master. He approaches Javier and informs him that he will be in charge of all the cutting tasks from now on. He expresses gratitude for Javier's survival, and Javier reciprocates the sentiment. All his pets become emotional and hug him. The system window notifies him that the number of fates he has saved is 23,513,442, and the number starts increasing quickly. It informs him that the number of fates he has kept is now 31,145,782. It also notifies that the number of lives that it would have directly caused damage to is below that number. He ponders why he received that many more points than a bonus, considering that if the zombie lizard had lived, it would have killed more than 10 million people. The system notifies that among the people he saved, there is one who would create a sturdy business. The jobs created at that person's business would keep a family that would have starved to death. When the child of that family grows up into an adult, he will save someone who falls into the water, and that person is a doctor. It notifies that the doctor creates an incredible medicine, and the chain of effects from all of these has been taken into consideration and added to him as DP. A life that he saves does not affect that person alone. He thinks if 1 DP can be converted into 1,000 gold, he will become a very happy man. The message box says forget it. Just then, Javier calls him and informs him that he heard the bone dragon did not die, suggesting they need to do something about it. He observes that it's already starting to move and asks if he should cut it down further. Lloyd Frontera disagrees, stating no. The system window notifies that Undead Domination Level 2 has been achieved. He suggests letting it revive quickly. The system window indicates that the things he can dominate are zombie monsters and ghosts. He mentions he has many places where he can put it to good use. The system clarifies that the things he can dominate include zombie monsters, ghosts, and bone dragons. The dragon bones start to revive, and they observe it. It fully revives. The system window notifies that the parasitic soul within the bone dragon's bones has rejected the undead domination and asks if he would like to purge the parasitic soul. Lloyd Frontera responds, of course he does. The system window notifies that his mind has transferred into the dragon's skull to defeat the king of black mages, Targa, and obtain the bones. He reflects that he moved his soul into the bone dragon's body right before he got killed by the queen. He looks back and sees Targa kneeling there. The system window notifies about Targa's details and indicates low blood pressure, dyslexia, preference for marinated meat and salty food, single status, never dated before, and a habit of blocking one nostril when trying to get rid of boogers. He thinks it's too much information, and he is not curious about any of that at all. Targa reveals that he has possessed cursed mana from birth, and the people in his village would discriminate against his family and bully them. His mother called him a demon, stating that he ruined her life and was her life's greatest regret, but he still loved her. As Targa tries to continue, Lloyd Frontera interrupts and punches him in the face, saying so what? The system window notifies that he has succeeded in purifying the parasitic soul. He transfers back to the queen and Javier. The dragon bones scream. The system window informs that the bone dragon is now under undead domination. His baby soul comes near him and enters his body through his nose. The system window notifies him to please say hi to the bone dragon that has obtained a new ego, and the words he says to it will determine his relationship with it. He says he is its father. The dragon bones attack him with a magic ball. They all prepare to attack him back. Lloyd Frontera wonders if he will fail at gaslighting it. The dragon bones create a heart with magic, and her wings say, "Dad." Lloyd Frontera pats him and says he will give him a name. He states that he is not anything like a zombie, a cursed existence, and he is a proud being even among dragons. He decides to name him Yang Yang. Javier and Queen Alicia Termina Magentano think it's lame. The message box also notifies that it's lame. He thinks to himself, shut up. He can't help that he majored in natural sciences. The message box warns him not to dare belittle natural sciences majors. He thinks about his precious baby, realizing it will only take him 1 second to split a mountain now. His dear Yang Yang is a treasure, his greatest heavy machinery. She looks at Javier and thinks he has probably reached the level of the Grandmaster, which is a legendary existence that can even cut down gods. Yang Yang, what a lame name, she thinks. She contemplates a power that can destroy a whole nation on its own. Lloyd Frontera, a man who could destroy the entire world in just one morning, is now out of his hands. The scene shifts to Queen Alicia Termina Magentano standing in front of her people. She acknowledges that her rash actions caused significant worry and assumes sole responsibility for the consequences. She credits Lloyd for preventing casualties in a massive disaster, although he attempts to dissuade her from mentioning his name through gestures and pleas. She reflects on the irony of the most powerful individual in the world being someone with aspirations of wealth and rural living, as well as an irritating personality. Queen Alicia publicly attributes the successful outcome to Lloyd Frontera, prompting the gathered crowd to express their joy. In a playful gesture, she teases him by sticking out her tongue. After a while, Lloyd Frontera remarks nice. He mentions that the queen has promised to pay him 2 billion gold for restoration work, and he feels empowered as if he could face a dragon now. Javier sits nearby, holding his pillow, and asks if Lloyd has forgotten that they all nearly died. Lloyd responds that the keyword is almost, everyone survived, and that's what truly matters. He asserts that he can do much more than merely pass the time now. He can live life like an emperor. Javier inquires if Lloyd considers himself akin to a god. Lloyd dismisses the idea, expressing doubt. If he were a god, he quips, he wouldn't have a face like his own. Lloyd Frontera grimaces and expresses his desire to leave. Javier inquires about the whereabouts of the real Lloyd Frontera, questioning if he is deceased. Lloyd responds that he doesn't know. Upon awakening, he finds himself inhabiting this body. Javier probes further, asking if Lloyd intentionally took over the body of the real Lloyd Frontera. Lloyd confirms, saying yes. Javier reclines on the sofa and requests Lloyd to sing a lullaby. Lloyd acknowledges the request and questions whether Javier believes everything he has said. Javier observes that Lloyd wears an annoyingly shameless expression when lying, but when telling the truth, he appears vulnerable somewhere. Just then, there is a knock at the door, followed by a voice announcing their entrance. Lloyd Frontera inquires about the visitor's identity and questions whether they entered without prior notice. Javier remarks that he senses no mana from him and concludes that they are not living beings. He introduces themselves as Dragon Antiques, or more precisely, a messenger of Antiques and the original soul of the bone dragon that Lloyd defeated. Lloyd Frontera asks the reason for their visit. He responds nonchalantly, stating that they aren't surprised. Lloyd Frontera questions whether there's a reason to be surprised. He clarifies, mentioning Lloyd's earlier acknowledgement of their dragon nature, but then dismisses the thought, suggesting they forget about it. He declares, invoking the name of a great dragon, that he commands Lloyd to immediately go to hell and rescue the true soul of Antiques. Lloyd Frontera reclines and states that he does not want to comply, bidding farewell. Emotionally, he urges him to wait, pleading with him not to act in such a manner, and asks if he cannot assist him, adding a please. Lloyd Frontera questions his persistence and reiterates that he will not undertake the task. He offers to grant Lloyd membership in the Dragon King's circle if he rescues the soul. Lloyd Frontera remarks on his shrewdness in business and requests to hear the benefits of such membership. The scene shifts 5 hours ago to where soldiers are working on the canal's restoration. They are trying to remove heavy trees from the canal and are urged to pick up the pace on the canal's restoration. It is said that they will send a separate group to deal with the destroyed parts of the forest. They all work diligently while Lloyd Frontera sits calmly and drinks coconut water. Queen Alicia Termina Magentano approaches him from behind and calls out to him. He admits he was caught and explains that he was just resting for a little while. She questions why he isn't keeping watch and remarks that a grandmaster like him can't even detect someone coming nearby while drinking something. What a messed up situation. He quickly bows in front of her as she states he's a supervisor. It's not his job to move the logs himself. He agrees and says that's correct. He was just collecting his thoughts back there. She asks why he said he was caught. He attempts to say something while she instructs his soldier to leave them alone, and he agrees and walks away. She beckons him to come closer, stating she has something to tell him but needs to whisper. She attempts to use her blast powers, but she finds herself unable to do so and begins to tremble. She acknowledges the sensational feeling but quickly dismisses it, realizing that if she were to become his enemy, her kingdom would be destroyed. She can't simply slap his buttocks just because she's the queen. However, she realizes it looks so tempting for a spanking that she does it without realizing it. Lloyd Frontera addresses her as Her Highness, expressing his willingness to accept any punishment if he has done something wrong. Javier chimes in, stating he would gladly accept having his buttocks hit, knowing he was a pervert. He retorts that he's not a jerk, that was just an idiomatic expression, she shouldn't put words in his mouth. The message window notifies him that a natural science student is using an idiomatic expression. He reflects that natural science students know things like that too. She inquires where he sent the bone dragon and expresses concern about the potential commotion if someone were to see it. He reassures her that he has already considered that and orders her to hide in a faraway land where no humans visit. She remarks that it listens to him like a dog and points out that he has a grandmaster and a bone dragon, asking if he's not aware that he has the strongest forces in the world within his county. He responds that he understands her concerns, addresses her as Her Highness, and states that power is necessary to maintain peace and stability. He states that he would be crazy to try and use them for himself, emphasizing that he's simply someone under her care and will forever be a citizen of hers. She expresses gratitude towards him, and he reciprocates by thanking her for her gracious words. Afterward, she returns to her palace and contemplates the concept of controlling a strong power, realizing that he is much stronger than he appears. She feels increasingly weak and collapses, prompting her soldiers to rush to her aid. She reflects on the poison she was exposed to in Targa's castle and realizes she is unable to detoxify it. After a while, Lloyd Frontera notices a notification indicating that the number of fates he has saved is DP 31,145,782, but suddenly the numbers start dropping. He wonders what's happening, why it's suddenly decreasing, as the number of fates reaches 18,124,392. He realizes that the lives he saved are dying, with more than 10 million people facing death. He reflects that the dragon is also a character that didn't appear in the novel at all, indicating that unexpected dangers will continue to arise. Queen Alicia lies on her bed, and her demonic eye asserts that Lloyd is a dangerous person who needs to be killed immediately, fearing he will come after her life. She disagrees, stating he isn't that kind of person. However, her demonic eye insists that he must be killed, and she must be the one to do it. She retrieves her sword and leaves the room. On the other side, Lloyd Frontera sits with Dragon Mister, who explains how his life ended and how the King of Hell captured his soul. Dragon Mister continues, mentioning that because Lloyd has a heart similar to a dragon's, he was pondering. Lloyd interrupts, telling Dragon Mister to stop, and says he's not curious about his situation at all. Dragon Mister apologizes but insists on motivating him. Lloyd responds that he's not motivated by his situation, but by the terms Dragon Mister will offer him, asking about the benefits he'll receive, while Javier looks at him annoyingly. Dragon Mister suggests that if he obtains the Dragon King membership, he will have the opportunity to share in the riches of the Dragon King, which are close to being infinite. Intrigued, he responds, "Wow, that sounds good. What else?" Just then, Queen Alicia arrives at their door. Dragon Mister urges him not to miss the chance to gain such a special privilege, explaining that with the membership, he will receive an extra life and be able to revive on the spot if he dies. Sensing someone's presence outside the door, Javier draws his sword while Lloyd remarks, "Nice, that's exactly what he needs right now." But how does he know that what he said is true? Dragon Mister asserts that he's a dragon. He doesn't lie. Unconvinced, he decides to dismiss the idea and seek help elsewhere. However, Dragon Mister interjects, asking what he needs to do for him to earn his trust. Javier quickly opens the door and steps outside, scanning his surroundings. He looks towards the figure and inquires about the issue. Javier responds that it's nothing. He thinks he is being too sensitive. He muses on how lame it is for a grandmaster to hide somewhere and wonders what on earth she was thinking. He then asks if there's a possibility of receiving magic from Dragon Mister that would guarantee his escape from hell, along with making a vow of the soul, stating that his soul will be erased for eternity if he fails to keep his promise. Dragon Mister questions how he knows about the vow of the soul, mentioning that it's something only dragons are aware of. Javier retorts, questioning if that's what's important right now, and demands to know whether Dragon Mister will agree to it or not. He warns that if Dragon Mister takes too long to decide, he'll go to sleep. Dragon Mister responds, saying to wait, and then agrees. He raises his hand and solemnly states the vow. He vows that if he fails to keep his promise, his soul shall be erased for eternity. He inquires if that's all, and Dragon Mister apologizes, stating there aren't any special effects for this. He responds, mentioning that it's been bothering him since just now, questioning whether his hair and beard are actually tentacles, and why they are constantly moving despite there being no wind in the room. Dragon Mister explains that it's because he's a dragon. He questions the connection between being a dragon and his moving hair and beard. Dragon Mister then proceeds to draw a pattern on Lloyd's hand and explains that this is the escape magic. He instructs Lloyd to clasp his hands tightly together and shout, "Commandments of time and space, break the taboo and show him where he must go." If he does this, a gate will open for him to escape back into this world. Dragon Mister adds that the incantation might not sound too powerful, but if he thinks of someone who knows him, a gate will open in the vicinity of that person. He becomes excited, closes his hand, and exclaims, "Great, okay then." He asks if they will head to hell to get him that extra life and suggests to Javier that he let go while Dragon Mister opens a portal. Javier expresses concern, stating that it's hell, and suggests they should consider his opinion on this. He looks at him in confusion and tells him that he needs to go wherever he tells him to. He jumps into the portal and says, "Let's go." Javier thinks to himself that he doesn't believe he's being paid enough for this job and also jumps into the portal. At that moment, all of Hell's alarms begin to alert every demon, and Hellkaros also receives a warning notification. He thinks to himself that a human has dared to infiltrate Hell, and the demons already know what happened between that human and the Hell Knight, and they all have the same thought. Wow, the great singer of Hell is here to host a concert. A baby soul is scared and emerges from a hole, spotting some demons walking nearby. One of them remarks, "Well," and it looks like they have an escaped soul. They capture the baby soul and inquire how he dares attempt to defy their rule and flee. The demon threatens to chew him up and marinate him in sauce for a day to turn him into sweet and sour pork. Baby soul, frightened, hopes someone will save him. Lloyd Frontera arrives and tries to communicate with them, but they ignore him. He then shouts, demanding they answer his question. The baby soul looks at him, finding him terrifying. The demon comments that even if Lloyd Frontera is a great singer, he's merely a human, just as Lloyd Frontera hits him with his shovel, causing the demon to fall asleep. The other demon confronts him, questioning how he could suddenly strike his friend out of nowhere, noting his friend's crooked chin, and demands an apology. Javier asks him if he is worried about his friend right now, noting what a kind-hearted demon he seems to be. The demon retorts, asking what he even knows about him, instructing him to stop talking nonsense and asserting that he's truly cold-hearted and evil. Javier refuses, insisting that he is indeed a kind-hearted demon and speculating that his mother must have raised him with lots of love. Javier suggests that his mother might have told him something along the lines of becoming a good demon who cares for those around him. He imagines she must have hugged him daily, affirming that he is a lovely child who loves others. The demon begins to shiver and becomes emotional. Javier suggests that her words must have been like a blessing to him, endlessly boosting his self-confidence, and that he must have grown to be such a kind-hearted demon by learning from his good mother. He cries and refuses, while Javier again asks if this is what his mother said to him when he got angry, emphasizing that the feeling he has is also a part of him, so he should be sure to protect those emotions. He refuses and says his mom didn't do that, while Javier expresses hope that he'll be nice to his mother. Meanwhile, Lloyd Frontera looks at them, and the demon shouts to take them back right now, calling him mean. Lloyd tells Javier that he went a little overboard there, to which Javier replies, asking what he means. Lloyd remarks that Javier is super talented at tearing a demon apart, but even so, there are certain boundaries he shouldn't cross. The demon asks what just happened, and Javier attacks him as well with his shovel, throwing him away. The other demon approaches Javier, hugs him, and cries profusely. Lloyd Frontera again runs to attack him, while the demon cries and says his mom said she was glad he was born, and she said that he was her happiness. The demon says to ask him anything he wants, and he'll answer everything, then sits in front of him. Lloyd Frontera remarks that it's great. It looks like he's finally ready to answer. The demon responds that Lloyd never gave him a chance to answer though. Lloyd Frontera asks if he would have answered if he hadn't beaten him up, while the other demon continues to hug Javier. The demon replies to Lloyd, stating that no, he wouldn't have answered, and he finds this man acting in unexpected ways like it's nothing, which makes him respect him. He then asks the first question, revealing an object, and asks if it's a smartphone while showing him the phone. The demon responds saying no, it's the spirit phone. Lloyd Frontera asks why the phone is giving weird replies. The demon explains that the spirit phone doesn't have a search function, and he can't find any information on Hell. Even if he does find something, 40% of it is lies while he looks at his spirit phone. He responds, stating that if 40% of it is real information, that's already way better than the human world. The demon asks, surprised, if he saw through his lie, to which he replies that demons are just full of lies. He then asks his second question, where's the castle of the King of Hell? The demon responds that he already told him the castle is in the west and questions why he is heading to the east. He retorts that it's because the demon lied, calling him a little liar, and asks if he's happy that he's swearing at him, remarking on his behavior. He then demands that the demon tell him everything he knows about the King of Hell and about Hell itself, stating that he'll berate him with swear words when they reach the castle. The demon remarks that it sounds really tempting. Then, the demon asks, by the way, since he's a human, how is he fine within the high heat flames of Hell? He responds that he'll be the one to ask questions and make comments that are a little hurtful. Suddenly, the message window notifies him that the tidal effect has been activated. The veteran is now wearing only panties in the western country and gains 100 resistance to dehydration in all high heat areas. He asks if that is the Hell Castle, while the demon refuses. He replies, alright, they're here, as they fly there on Jigomeng. He tells Javier let's go and says it is time to fight the King of Hell. Javier responds, sir, he's a great singer, while a demon arrives and mentions that he said he would berate him with swear words when they got there. He responds that he doesn't want that, so the demon should get lost. The demon remarks, well, that really made him start falling in love, while the other demon waves his hand to say goodbye to Javier. They both walk towards the Castle of Hell, where two guards see them and ask what's that. Not only did they walk into hell themselves, but they're also acting all confident if are they nuts as they look at them. They come to Lloyd, who looks at them and says that scared him, while he also scares them. They all run and sit, turning their faces toward the walls. He laughs and remarks that hell is such an easy place, while Javier also chimes in, advising them to be careful as they don't know what might appear. The guard captain of the King of Hell introduces himself as Heliximus, the guard captain of the King of Hell's office and the 2nd Brigade's general. Lloyd Frontera questions how dare he stand in the way of his mission, and Javier attacks him repeatedly. He comments, wow, what a series of careful beatings, and opens the door where Helcaros sits at his table, writing something. He thinks to himself that he knew it, that it wasn't a dream. He ponders what he briefly saw within the flames and is now certain. Lloyd Frontera enters and states that he, a human, pays his respects to the King of Hell, bowing in front of him. Helcaros asks why he has come now of all times, instructing him not to disturb him as he's busy. Lloyd responds that he wants to get off work, and Helcaros stops writing, asking why he's stating the obvious, questioning if he can help him achieve it. Lloyd Frontera considers some of the things he learned through the spirit phone, 670,000 years, and thinks that is the number of years that the King of Hell has worked without a single break. He reflects on how the previous King of Hell worked for 35 billion years without a break, fell into depression, and took his own life. He believes that the current King of Hell also knows that he'll end up following the same path as his predecessor. Helcaros asks how he will allow him to live a life where he can clock off on time. He responds that it's his business secret. Helcaros asks if he dares to negotiate with the King of Hell and says he knows he is crazy, but this is going a little overboard. He replies, please feel free to execute him now if he dislikes him, adding that then he can continue to work for the next 35 billion years. Meanwhile, he considers that there's no guarantee that Javier will be able to protect him here, especially against the King of Hell, a being that possesses an unfathomable amount of power. He believes there's one piece of information that he's counting on. The spirit phone had lots of content that were criticizing the King of Hell. He thinks the King of Hell would ignore the laws and make his own judgments as he pleased. He sees a message on the spirit phone that it's shocking news that the current King of Hell has broken the laws of Hell and executed a soul, leading to the decision to take down the King of Hell. However, he realizes there isn't any solid evidence that means the King of Hell is actually someone who strictly executes laws. He decides to bet that he's an above-the-board and honest employee. After a while, Helcaros calls him, asking what Kim Suho wants. He believes he has gained the upper hand in this negotiation, understanding that the one who's more desperate is the loser. He bows and says he wants the soul of Antiques, which he has detained there, to be freed. Helcaros asks if he's referring to this, showing him a baby dragon captured in a magical bowl. He explains that he only keeps it for his own entertainment, so it isn't of great value to him. He then asks, all right, now that he has shown him what he wants to see, isn't it time for him to give him an answer and inquire how he will help him knock off work? Lloyd Frontera responds that he will set up an expressway. He thinks that while the crazy workload is a problem, there's a bigger issue for the King of Hell. He believes that after being judged by the King of Hell, the souls are escorted to the gate of reincarnation. He also believes that the demons would then transport those souls in carts, but due to the messed up terrain of Hell, the routes keep changing. He thinks that the demons are too stupid to find a new route on their own, while he sees some demons who throw souls into the fire. He reflects that in the end, the King of Hell has to keep updating the new routes in real time, which is the core reason he's unable to knock off work. He believes that if they build an expressway to transport those souls, then the King of Hell's workload can be reduced exponentially. He thinks that just by handing over antiques, he'll be able to knock off work and enjoy a sweet and relaxing time. Helkaros says he'll write up the contract and proceed with his idea. He thinks, nice, Dragon King membership, here he comes, and Helkaros says he has used up a full minute just to talk to him. Helkaros explains that if the reincarnation of microorganisms and bacteria is delayed, it could cause a great extinction of all living things. Helkaros mentions that he doesn't have the time to plan manpower and material supplies for him and states that demons who want to work are already transporting souls. He adds that he can do whatever he wants with the idiots that are left and send some documents to him. Meanwhile, he responds that he's an expert when it comes to delegating tasks, and he just needs one announcement from him on the spirit phone and it'll all be resolved. He grabs the documents, and they both teleport to another location. He exclaims, wow, the King of Hell's power is incredible. He marvels at how the king is able to teleport them with just the wave of a finger and remarks that it's the gate of reincarnation. It looks like a black hole as he gazes at the gate. He adds that it would be the end of him if he got too close to it. Javier asks if his name is Kim Suho, or whatever his name is, to tell him his plans. Lloyd Frontera thinks that Javier already knows that he's not Lloyd Frontera, and he can't tell what he's thinking. Javier says, as he explained to the King of Hell just now, that they'll be making a road with iron and asks if iron would be able to last above the lava. He responds that he'd only suggest it if it were possible, while he receives a message on his spirit phone about the concert of the great singer of Hell, Lloyd Frontera, which is located at the ends of Hell and is scheduled for 5 hours from now. A demon says, take a look at this, he's really holding a concert. It's so exciting. Another demon remarks that he can't believe he'll be hearing the rumored singing of Hell in person, and suggests they go quickly. Yet another demon adds that his heart is racing quickly. He looks at them and thinks that if he dares to mess up his pitch or miss a beat, they'll drag him all the way down since he's supposed to be better than them. They request him to sing for them again and again, but he replies that he's not going to sing. They respond that they came all the way there just to hear him sing and ask why he isn't singing. He replies because he doesn't feel like it. One of the demons says he can feel his blood pressure rising and abuses him. Another demon threatens to kill him if he doesn't come down, and they ask him to keep his promise. He says, Javier, it's his turn now. Javier asks if he thinks promises need to be kept. They assert that, of course, promises are meant to be kept. He agrees, saying they're right and should keep his promise, while Javier remarks that they all must have been taught some manners at home. They retract their words, telling him not to keep his promise and say to wait a minute, as they don't know what to do anymore. He laughs and calls them idiots, saying it's so easy to make fools out of them. The demon says he can't take this anymore and orders to bring him down. He starts dancing, laughs, and says come on up if he thinks he can. They complain that it's infuriating, driving them nuts, and plead for someone to do something about him, feeling frustrated. He thinks, gets angry, goes crazy, and lets every single vessel within his body be filled with hatred for him. He believes that when that happens, all of them will become his unpaid slaves. Jigomang arrives, and Lloyd Frontera says if they hate what they see, then they should try catching him while all the demons get angry and threaten to kill him. Flames fire up more, and Lloyd Frontera sits on Jigomang and flies away. He says come on, bring it on, while they ask if he thinks they can't cross that and tell him to wait right there. They run, and with the help of a pole, they try to come out. He throws a stone toward them, hitting that demon and throwing him into the fire, but he saves himself as he falls on a rock. That demon and all his other team members are scared. He looks at them and says what a shame and thinks that the demon is really going to kill him, while he lies down there calmly and sees the Archdemon Civic Center. A demon announces there that everyone, they are demon, and how can they let him do this to them? They have to kill him. This means war, and he shouts, Lava Centipede Squad, take charge. Many lava centipedes run towards him to attack, and the system notifies him that they're creatures of hell that possess lava-resistant scales, and they generally move in straight lines, so they're used for charging. The demon sits on a centipede and instructs the others to follow him. He gives instructions to them, and they notice his chair is empty now, asking where he has gone. The lava centipedes start smelling something and run so fast, while the demons ask what's wrong, what's happening to them. They see the centipedes and notice that they seem to be smelling something. They ask them to stop moving while they run towards a cave. The demons quickly descend, and they enter the cave where Ji Jemong takes a bath. Lloyd Frontera and Javier sit near him, with Javier sharpening his sword. Lloyd Frontera looks at the lava centipedes and says they caught on the scent of chicken broth. He throws some blocks toward them, and the demon seems at these while he counts numbers. Javier attacks that demon and kills him, and all the other lava centipedes also try to enter the cave. The demons order them to go back and retreat, asking what's this and what's happening inside, and they say Javier and Lloyd Frontera are murderers and cry for help. Lloyd Frontera arranges the blocks in a line and says now 32,435 free materials obtained. He thinks the operation to bait the centipedes with chicken broth is a success, and they all bow in front of him. He says he has also obtained a workforce and laughs. He says let's dig some ground, his free laborers. Helcaros looks at his screen and thinks that the guy gathered information about him and the creatures of hell, and he knew all of that in advance before he came up with the railroad idea. He was only thinking of capturing him to use him as an advisor. Meanwhile, Lloyd Frontera is contemplating whether he can delegate his job to someone else while he observes all the demons digging there. He thinks, of course, there's no way the demons would perform their work obediently. They would likely attempt to escape the public CCTV and incite a riot. Meanwhile, Javier captures a demon by its horn and drags it along with him, causing fear among the others who witness it. They all shout, demanding their freedom and rights. Javier asserts that it's the right thing to do, resorting to abusive language, which prompts the others to cover their mouths in shock. However, he also realizes that there are limits to the effectiveness of such violent methods. All the demons continue to work, carrying bags to another location. One of them struggles with a heavy bag and falls down, prompting another demon to inquire if he is all right. Lloyd Frontera arrives and extends a hand to the fallen demon, saying, "Here, take his hand." The demon accepts the gesture, but Lloyd crushes his hand, causing the demon to scream in pain. He approaches him, telling him to get up quickly and work, advising him not to act weak, noting that he can clearly see all his muscles. He mentions that he only helped that guy for 5 seconds before slacking off. Grasping his horns, he insists that he wants him to carry 5 times what he's currently carrying. The demons begin to cry and hug each other, declaring him a villain, trash, and the most terrible person in the world. They believe this is why they can't help but fall in love with him, seeing him as the role model for all demons from whom they need to learn. As he walks away, he believes he has successfully won over the demons' hearts. Later, he instructs them to repeat after him, emphasizing safety, while a baby demon hides, contemplating the voice he hears from somewhere. He remarks that there's no safety for demons like them and continues on his way. He adds that of course there won't be any breaks either, stating they can rest after they're dead. The baby demon becomes angry and questions why that bastard is here. The scene shifts to a few years ago in Frontera territory. There, he contemplates one day randomly losing his body. His body feels cold, and his soul looks at his body, wondering who that bastard is. He shouts at the figure, demanding his body back and hurling insults. He attempts to attack his body, but a shield appears to stop him. Confused, he asks how this happened and questions the identity of the figure, whether they are a wizard or a demon. His body responds, irritating him with its tone, stating that he already knows this message. He wonders if the figure is just some crazy bastard and notices a Grim Reaper, which frightens him. Javier also arrives at the scene. The Grim Reaper inquires about the situation, addressing him as chief and explaining that he is out on a business trip due to a report from the soul sensor. However, he notes that the soul's color is strange red. The Grim Reaper further states that the soul is not registered as scheduled for death, which is unusual. He attempts to intervene, urging everyone to calm down for the time being. The Grim Reaper remarks that the case is currently peculiar. He doesn't know if it's an error on their end or if there's something else going on, so they need to look into it. He ponders what the hell. This person's visual and tone of voice don't fit at all. The Grim Reaper then returns, requesting them to wait there for a moment while they sort things out. He reflects on how he spent his time, neither alive nor dead, around the bastard who stole his body for a few years. He observes his body shivering as he walks with Javier. Entering inside, he sees the imposter working and realizes that the imposter is different from him. He reflects on how he blamed his poor parents and territory, resting his head on the bar table. He acknowledges that he chose a path that worsened every day, but he never rested, continuously moving forward. Eventually, he managed to pay off the family's debt, and the gazes of his mother and father when they looked at him had completely changed. He observes the impostor using bizarre magic and summoning, noting how they manipulate Podong. He wonders if he has a skill like that. The Grim Reaper returns and questions if they think the impostor would still drink alcohol every day if they didn't possess such superpowers. He further wonders if they would work as hard as he does with that ability. Apologizing for eavesdropping, the Grim Reaper finds the situation strange and chuckles, mentioning that there's no precedent for his case. However, since he's a soul, it doesn't seem like he should remain in this world. He suggests meeting with the King of Hell for consultation. Lloyd Frontera reflects on the impostor who stole his body, finding the experience painful. He believes the impostor helped him realize everything he should be ashamed of. He recalls the King of Hell stating that there was no relevant legislation and taking no specific measures. He realizes he couldn't reincarnate or vanish from a life where he had to navigate hell while evading the eyes of evil demons. The scene shifts back to the present, where a baby soul is seated behind the rocks, observing Lloyd. It contemplates that he shouldn't be there while he rides Jemong and flies away. Lloyd Frontera surveys his surroundings, noting the messy topography. He considers going around, realizing he needs flat land like this. He calculates the distance, 110 kilometers, finding it a bit long but necessary, knowing there are those who aren't eating or resting. He estimates there are 30,000 demons unable to eat or rest, and he can end their suffering soon. He decides to check for any dangerous ground. Suddenly, Baby Soul arrives and kicks him away. Lloyd Frontera, startled, demands to know who the intruder is, but he is interrupted as the Baby Soul strikes him again, causing him to cough. He is abused, and Hamming arrives, creating a barrier around the baby's soul, who demands to be let go. Bangul joins them, and Hamming throws Baby Soul toward Bangul. Lloyd Frontera, puzzled, inquires about the newcomer while Bangul brings Baby Soul before him, privately thinking he's rather unsightly. As Lloyd sits nearby, he requests a moment and, upon closer inspection, recognizes him, questioning if he is Lloyd Frontera. Baby Soul confirms he is indeed Lloyd Frontera, the one whose body he stole, realizing he was in hell. Lloyd Frontera asks how he ended up in hell so quickly after stealing his body, expressing surprise that he didn't take responsibility. This triggers an emotional response from the baby soul, who mentions his mother and father finally accepting him and laments their sadness, urging him to return. Lloyd Frontera attempts to calm him down and offer an explanation. The baby soul, enraged, rejects the notion of calming down, hurling abuse, and receiving a punch from Hamming. He remarks that now he's finally prepared to listen and suggests resolving everything through conversation. The baby soul, still under attack, questions the concept of conversation, accusing him of being a gangster, a body thief, and a beastly figure. Bangul captures him, and Hamming continues to beat him. He explains that he didn't arrive there by dying, but rather made a contract with the King of Hell to undertake construction work. He emphasizes that he didn't intend to take over his body. It was a surprise to find himself in it upon awakening. The baby soul challenges his identity, asking who he really is. He responds that he is a shy young man named Kim So-hoo who studied civil engineering in South Korea. He asks if Baby Soul believes him, stating he can't provide any further information. Regardless, he asserts that his presence has brought about positive changes in his territory. Javier interjects, reminding him of his earlier plea to take responsibility and questioning why he should, considering the improvements since he entered his body. He expresses gratitude but admits he can't express it himself. As he ponders, he senses Kim Suho's presence and realizes he's communicating with the true young master, Lloyd. The baby soul laments that if it weren't for him, he could have lived a good life, now reduced to a wandering spirit. He insists that he must take responsibility for this situation. In response, he agrees to address the issue, suggesting they go their separate ways since he gains nothing from helping him. He bids farewell and begins to walk away. Baby Soul pleads for him to wait, questioning if he has no conscience, but Hamming and Bangul continue to beat him and throw him aside. Recognizing the baby soul as the true offspring of the aforementioned two, he returns and seizes him, asking what he needs to do to stop his incessant complaining. He retorts that it's for him to ponder. The baby soul queries why he was treated that way, and he explains it was because he called him an imposter. Baby Soul argues that it was the truth. He counters that in Korea, one gets punished for speaking the truth and advises him to remain silent until the construction is completed, promising to assist him afterward. Meanwhile, Baby Soul demands to know who gave permission to imprison him, but he silences him and tucks him into his pocket, instructing him to remain quiet. He contemplates the ambitious construction project spanning 110 kilometers, eager to complete it swiftly to quiet the Baby Soul's protests. He plans out the stages, first completing the roadbed, then using pyroclastic rocks for Stage 2, followed by laying out rail ties made from centipede legs for Stage 3. Stage 4 involves laying the rails crafted from centipede shells processed by Javier, and Stage 5 is compressing the rails, calling Podong to start jumping on them. He acknowledges that while this construction method may not be the most advanced, it will result in a shaky and dusty surface, possibly inducing nausea when riding on it, though he dismisses this concern. He informs Javier that he will conduct an inspection round to ensure proper supervision. Javier acknowledges his instructions. He ponders the nature of this imposter, acknowledging their history of productivity, but noting that they've been tirelessly working for over a month without rest. He wonders when they will take time to relax and enjoy themselves, questioning if this is their usual lifestyle. Recalling Grim Reaper's words about the imposter's superpowers, he wonders if they had such abilities, would they still choose to work so diligently, or would they indulge in alcohol and leisure activities instead? He concludes that the imposter is cheap, petty, and likely to flee at the first sign of trouble. Irritated by the incessant noise, he realizes he hasn't slept for 20,000 years and wonders who is causing the disturbance. Unable to tolerate it any longer, he triggers a volcanic eruption, causing Dunkleo's to emerge and demand that the noise cease so he can sleep. He becomes scared and wonders why something always appears when working on construction. Dunkleo's expresses frustration, stating he tried to tolerate it, but this is too much, questioning if that's what's causing all the commotion. The demons scatter and warn others, shouting that it's Dunkleo's and advising them to run away. He questions why Dunkleo's is awake already when it's supposed to be asleep for another 10,000 years. They observe Lloyd and comment on how quickly the human is running, criticizing him as selfish and hurling abuse. Dunkleo's inquires if Lloyd is the source of the disturbance, suggesting it might quiet down if he stomps on him. However, Lloyd swiftly evades the attack. Dunkleo's continues to abuse him, remarking that in life, things can get noisy, questioning why Lloyd would cause trouble when he could simply endure it. Offended, Dunkleo's demands to know if Lloyd is accusing him of being in the wrong. The demons become excited and praise him, stating that no human should be able to be so shameless, but he was able to do it. Dunkleo's declares all right then, let's see which one of them dies today, and rushes to attack him while he calls for Javier. Javier arrives within a second, but he remains still there. He then orders Javier to cut him up, prompting Javier to reply honestly, stating he thinks it would be right for them to apologize this time round, because they are the ones causing the inconvenience after all. He asks what is meant by inconvenience and shouts that he is the one being inconvenienced here, claiming he is the only one being considerate too. Dunkleo's attacks him while he taps his feet on the floor in anger, breaking a rock where demons are standing, causing them to fall into the lava and cry for help. He also almost falls into the lava, but Javier grabs him, and they both fly on Jijimong, though he falls down on a mountain. Javier flies towards him and attacks him again and again, causing him to divide into many parts. While Javier looks at him, he gathers again and returns to his real state, asking if Javier just hit him. He looks at Javier and realizes that Javier's attack didn't work on him,